We're back again with HTC. Daniel, welcome back.
Thank you.
Axel, welcome.
Thank you.
This is our second panel with HTC today, and we're going to be discussing VR content development walkthrough. Axel, you are the president MEA VR MADA, and Daniel, I guess now everybody knows you already. And we are also joined by Marios Bikos, Developer Relations Engineer at HTC. So I believe that today we are more focused on the developers and developer content. And this is really interesting for our audience as well, as we have many developers that are watching us or registered to the B2B meeting platform. Daniel, you will walk us through the content of this session and presentation and discussion.
Yes, today I have with me from our London headquarters my colleague Marios, who's managing the relationships of all developers' requirements from engineering technical perspective. So I encourage developers after this session, if they want to reach out to him for any support. And he will give us an overview on how we interact with the developer community, what is required for developers to be closer to us, to get our SDKs, to really focus on VR content development and how we can support them with the latest upcoming developments. I have also with me Axel, who's known in this industry for the last 20 years and recently heading the global business for VR MADA, which is a Spanish-based company, but with the local presence under Axel, where we've partnered with them on a real customer case where this content that was developed, and then they added some gamification element to make it really easy as a knowledge transfer, because it was mostly a training content, and how we were able to take this content from VR into a real business case study. I will leave the floor to Marios, who will start presenting the part related to content development and HTC's input from developer perspective.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Marios Bikos and I work as a developer relations engineer at HTC Vive. And this presentation is mainly to give you an idea of what you can build as a developer if you're first starting building a VR application, or if you want to utilize the family of Vive SDKs that we provide. In case you're not aware, HTC Vive has an exciting family of VR products and headsets, and we keep pushing to expand the possibilities of what developers and content creators can do in the world of virtual reality. From headsets such as Vive Pro Eye that offers integrated eye tracking capabilities, and it's designed for enterprises and VR users who want a premium VR experience, to Vive Cosmos that allows you to have a modularity and switch faceplates to achieve to handle every different scenario. But in order to utilize all those features and the hardware features, developers need to use SDKs and software to communicate with the hardware modules. And that's why we need to provide an easy-to-use interface so that developers don't have to reinvent the wheel. So in this presentation, I'll show you our SDKs and how you can build VR applications using Vive hardware. So first of all, if you're a developer and you want to develop a VR application for Vive PC-based headsets, then usually the first step is to use one of the popular game engines, or of course you can use your own game engine or a different game engine. But that's not enough. The game engine needs to be able to recognize the headset, and it needs to communicate with the headset to read input, which is the controllers and the headset pose. And of course, the engine then needs to write output, which is the rendered frame back to the display of the HMD to update the image according to the head pose. So if you want to develop PC-based applications for Vive Pro or Vive Cosmos series, then what you need to do is use the OpenVR SDK. This SDK was developed and maintained by Valve, and what it does is that it allows access to the native functionality of the headsets, and it makes it easy to develop for PC-based VR applications. So when you combine the OpenVR SDK with SteamVR runtime, you can get access to the VR hardware, and you can build application for a series of PC-based headsets, not just the Vive series. Usually this API is already integrated with Unity or Unreal Engine, so you can start building apps straight away. Now, things are a bit different when it comes to mobile VR applications or standalone VR headsets, such as the Vive Focus Plus. For that, developers will need to use a specific SDK that we provide, which is called WaveVR SDK. And this SDK allows you to build VR applications not just for Vive Focus Plus, but for a family of devices that are part of the Wave developer ecosystem. So what we do is we provide an SDK with a series of features that developers can use to create VR applications and achieve stable frame rates for a series of different devices, from mobiles to other VR headsets. Now, apart from OpenVR and Wave that I mentioned, over the last 5 years, we have accumulated several different SDKs because of all those different hardware features that we have. This table that I'm showing here lives on our website, and it's really useful for developers to understand what SDKs they can use with different Vive devices. But today, we're going to focus mainly on the hand tracking SDK and the eye tracking SDK, and showcase some features and share some demos and use cases from internal and external developers. So if we start with the Vive hand tracking SDK, that's a cross-platform tool. It utilizes the front cameras of Vive headsets, and it's based on a deep learning solution. Using it, developers can track both hands, left and right, at the same time. And of course, they can recognize gestures. At the moment, we support up to 6 different predefined gestures. You can see them on the screen. But of course, we're looking into adding more in the future according to the needs of developers. At the moment, the hand tracking engine that we have supports 3 different modes. We support the 2D mode that allows you to get a 2D point for each hand. The 3D point mode allows you to get a 3D point, and it's supported on all the headsets that have dual cameras in the front. And you can get a single 3D point for each hand. And finally, the most important one, it's the skeleton mode that allows you to get 21 3D key points, so you can form a complete skeleton of your hand. And what this skeleton mode does is that you can actually get finger-level 3D positional tracking. So tracking 4 points per finger and 1 for the palm. You can use the skeleton joints information, and then you can use custom 3D hand models to bring your physical hands into the virtual world and use them in VR applications. We'll show some examples in a few minutes. So in this demo, you can see the abilities of the hand tracking SDK. This one runs on Vive Pro, and it's using the skeleton mode that I mentioned. The complete skeleton of the hand is drawn as key points, and you have links as cylinders connecting those joints. The color of the link indicates the gesture that was detected, so you'll notice soon the user is doing different gestures, and the color will change. And when there are multiple hands, the color of the key point is used to distinguish between the left and right hand. So as you see, as the user moves hands and fingers, the skeleton is updating accordingly. Now, just to share with you the latest update, the hand tracking SDK is generally updated every month for developers, so we add new features and improvements. In the latest release, we introduced a new feature, which is pinned gesture recognition, which is defined by tapping thumb and index tips. And it's really useful for interaction with UI menus, as you can see on your left. And also, we added new cartoon hand models, as you can see on your right, that you can easily get started and integrate this into your VR application if you want simple hand tracking. And just to show you a use case, this is from Acute Art. It's a studio here in London that integrated hand tracking to one of their projects. They work together with international artists to produce compelling immersive experiences. So they wanted to be able to have the participant, in a way, become the player and actually interact with the content, not just view it. So you can see here how they use the hand tracking SDK really quickly. In just a week, they managed to integrate the SDK that we provide. And they added some basic interactions with simple objects that can be found in a kitchen. So it gives you an idea of how you can integrate hand tracking to your VR application. And I urge you to do that because it's really easy to do so. And it makes the application far more interactive when you can use your physical hands instead of controllers. So that's all for the hand tracking SDK. Moving on, I'll talk about the Vive eye tracking SDK. So in case you're not aware, HTC Vive launched Vive Pro Eye at CES 2019, which is the first VR mass market hardware that features built-in eye tracking support from our partner Tobii. And developers usually ask, what's the use case about eye tracking and why is eye tracking beneficial for VR applications? So here in this slide, you can see some of the use cases in case you're interested in integrating eye tracking to your VR application. I think number one should be foveate rendering. In case you're not aware, it's a must-have. I think it's going to be a must-have in the future for applications if you want to raise the bar of visual quality and achieve solid performance, as it allows you to render at a low resolution in the peripheral vision of the user. I'll show an example really quickly after that to get a better idea why it's really so important. The second use case, of course, is you can use eye tracking to understand the user behavior. So you can use that to get analytical insights for enterprises or for developers if you want to understand and test different scenarios quickly. Of course, as you already know, VR allows you to quickly build experimental scenarios, so you can iterate quickly on the design of a product, on the design of a building before moving to production. And with eye tracking, you can get the user behavior in that case. Now, training, of course, it is another use case. You can have social VR, social interactions with expressive avatars to mimic the user's eye movements. And of course, gaming, since this is a game developers conference, can be used to achieve an aim assist mechanic that allows you to aim, point, and select really quickly. For example, shooting an arrow where you're looking at or tossing something where you're looking at. It makes it far more immersive and interactive if you're able to do that in a nice way. We'll show a few examples in the next slides. So in this case, you can see one particular use case. This is with our partners BMW and Zero Light. They used Vive Pro Eye and eye tracking to map out and create a heat map of specifically where the user is looking at during an experience. So you can get useful insights about the behavior and the preferences of the user. Using that eye tracking information, Zero Light managed to track interactions 10 times every second. And this gives retailers powerful insights into the customer behaviors and of course, the preferences. And what you can see here on the slide is a heat map according to the eye tracking data that highlights what users were mostly focusing on during this VR application experiment. Now, we provide an SDK to be able to utilize Vive Pro Eye. With this SDK, developers can get different features. One of them is the pupil position and diameter of the user. You can get information about what the user is currently looking at. And you can get, of course, the vector or the gaze ray from the user's eyes towards the focused object. And beyond that, you can use the SDK, of course, to drive the facial animation of virtual avatars. So we provide a way to access the eye blend shape animations for a virtual avatar. So the virtual avatar will move according to the eye movements of the actual user. And finally, as I mentioned, foveate rendering. It's really important because you can improve the performance of VR applications and push the boundaries of what you can achieve in terms of visual quality. So here's another demo. You can see how you can use eye tracking to get the pupil position on the left and get the eye openness on the right. And it gives you an idea of how more immersive and interactive an experience can be. And it's really, really easy to use the SDK in your application using the Vive Pro Eye headset. Notice how natural the human looks and how greatly this improves, of course, the sense of immersion in a VR application. And of course, we have a tool to record the eye animations. So instead of having animators animate every single eye movement, you can actually record the user's eyes, and then replay this scenario in a training application, for example, to make the avatars more realistically interacting with the user. And for those of you that don't know what foveate rendering is, it's a technique that exploits the anatomy of the human eye. What it does is that it renders the resolution of the content in the peripheral view, as you can see in the video here, at a lower resolution. And it's only focusing all the processing power in a small foveated area at the center of the image, and depending on where the user is looking at in the content. And of course, this is dynamic foveated rendering that requires eye tracking to accurately render content according to the gaze direction. And using that, of course, developers can get much better performance and push the visual quality limit there. Now, you may have noticed from the slides that this SDK also supports lip tracking. That's because we provide also an HTC Vive lip tracking module. It's not currently a consumer device, and it's not planned for sale at the moment. But we're working with developers and enterprise customers that are interested in experimenting with it for potential applications. What this is, as you can see from the slide, is basically a small IR camera that can be attached to the Vive Pro Eye headset. And it allows developers to create a better avatar representation, especially for social VR. You can see here a screenshot from Neos VR, a platform that has added support for it. It's a social universe where both users and creator can coexist. And they experimented with the lip tracking module and actually managed to get support for avatars to make the social interaction more interactive. And we can track not just the lips, but actually the lower facial portion of the user's face. So that's great because you can get different facial expressions for the virtual avatars. So I think it's better to show this with an example. This is a demo that we provide with the SDK. So when developers download the SDK, they can try it straight ahead. It shows you how you can change. You don't really need to use just human avatars. You can apply this with any type of avatar. And you can map all those different values from the facial expressions to even make games or other interactive content. But it gives you an idea of how accurately we can track the facial bottom of the user, and it really adds immersion in the final content. And since this is a game developers conference, it would be nice to show you an example. This is from a developer jam we had here in London. So users had access to Vive Pro Eye and the lip tracking module to experiment and try different and hack a different solution. This is Munch Mania by Triangular Pixels. They created something like Beat Saber, but with food. So you can actually move your mouth up and down and eat food really quickly. And it was really a really fun experience, and it shows you what you can do even in the gaming field, in the gaming domain, with eye tracking and lip tracking in this case. Now, for the different SDKs that I mentioned, if you want to learn more things and you're a developer and you want to start integrating support for eye tracking or hand tracking, if you go to developer.vive.com, you'll find all the different SDKs that we provide. So feel free to visit the website after this presentation and explore and see what you can do with it, and share some feedback, of course. And if you have any questions or if you find any difficulties using the SDKs, you can go on our developer forums, and you can. We provide support there, so you can find interesting tips, interesting articles, and you can ask questions or share information about what you're working on. So it's a really useful resource for developers. And of course, if you want to learn more about the SDKs, we have a YouTube channel, HTC Vive, where you can find some of the latest tech talks, like the one today. So we upload everything, and the webinar recordings and everything else, and all the tech talks over there. So feel free to watch them as well. And finally, 2 more slides here. One is, it's worth mentioning that HTC Vive is really interested in expanding the VR ecosystem among game developers as well. So that's why we created Viveport Infinity. In case you're not aware, this is the world's first unlimited subscription service for VR experiences. And what we do is that we give limitless access to over 1,000 VR apps, games, video applications. So as a developer, you can actually submit your VR application to Viveport, and then this is available to our database of Viveport users. And it's also not just compatible with Vive headsets, but we want this to be open for everyone. So even if you have headsets from other providers, you can still use this Viveport Infinity as a service. If you have any questions about that, or if you want your game to be on Viveport, feel free to reach out to my colleague, Maria. You can see the email on the screen, and she will answer all your questions about that. And also, if you're a developer in an early stage startup, you may be interested to know more about our Vive VR accelerator, which is called ViveX. The main mission of ViveX is to grow the global VR ecosystem by supporting startups at an early stage. We try to support them and provide them with education, investment, and mentorship. So again, if you have a startup and you want to find out more about ViveX, reach out to my colleague Dave Haynes. He's the director of ViveX in the region, so he can help you with that. So thank you very much for your time, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Marius. I mean, very, very insightful how HTC Vive is engaging with its developer community. And I'm sure every developer interested in this area must go and register as a developer so they can get the full access to the SDKs and content highlights. I've got with me Mr. Axel, President of vArmada for the region. And we want to hear from him how they took this experience in content development in VR and made it more enterprise-driven, and how they added to it this gamification element by really leveraging on all of these SDKs and platforms and layers that sit below the level that we see as an interface in VR. And it came out with a great success story.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Let me give you a short introduction who we are, and let me basically guide you to a quick introduction of our company. We are vArmada. We are a technology company, international technology company with a strong presence in the Middle East. We have an office here in Dubai where we sit right now. We have an office in Abu Dhabi, and we are, as we speak, actually opening an office in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia as well. And we also have operations, of course, in other regions in the world, with our headquarters being in Spain. What we basically do, we are a B2B company, as you correctly mentioned already. We are not in the gaming industry, but we are using a lot of basically gaming technologies in our applications. And we are basically a company that transforms traditional training methodologies into virtual reality. And we are focusing there on governments worldwide to use our applications, and also large corporations. You see on this slide here some examples of our companies that we are working with. So we have global enrollments for VR training, for instance, with Cisco, and locally we are working strongly with the governments in the region here to introduce VR as a training methodology, basically. So why is VR an interesting tool to conduct training, basically, in a new way? A couple of reasons here. You see it on the slide also. VR can help to optimize cost for training, because you eliminate basically the need for travel to your training location. The location comes to you with VR. Another thing is you greatly reduce the risk as well. There, especially here in the region, if you look at industries like the oil and gas industry, they have many trainings where that are highly risky and highly costly. If you do this in VR, it's better to make a mistake in virtual reality than make the mistake in real. This can, at the end, even save lives. What VR can also do, it can increase the engagement of the people that you are training, basically. If you do a standard classroom training, you know, people are sitting there, they're absorbing the content, but there's many studies after 6 months, basically, they remember less than 30% of what they have seen. If you do the same in VR and you engage all your senses, your haptics, your visuals and everything, your hearing, there are studies that after 6 months, you remember more than 90% of what you have done. So the knowledge retention is much higher in virtual reality than other training methodologies. So very useful for that. What we do on top of that, we use analytics, and there I come back to the previous speaker who talked about eye tracking, for instance. We can use this technology to analyze how well the people are trained, or how well they perform for a certain task or for a certain training. So we are really looking forward to implement such technologies in our new training applications. And last but not least, VR is a great tool for collaboration as well. If you want to do a team training today, you need to bring all the people in the same room to do it together. In VR, the people can be anywhere located in the country or even in the world and come together in the same virtual environment and train together. So those are all great benefits that this VR technology can bring to training, and we are basically implementing this specifically for enterprises and governments. So how do we do this? We are not just a software developer, we are end-to-end training technology provider. So we have kind of a turnkey approach to that, which starts actually by analyzing the training requirements with the customer. Not everything makes sense in VR. There are certain trainings that make more sense to, read it on a paper or watch a video, but many things make sense in VR. And then we create basically with our training experts a methodology how to convert the current training scenario into a virtual scenario. We present this to the client, we talk through it, we sign it off, and then we go into development. We develop the training scenarios, then we go into deployment, we deploy it on site. And for that, we have our, what we call the VR Enterprise Training Platform, which basically standardizes how training is conducted in virtual reality in governments and large corporations. And we are also collaborating with HTC on that to implement all these features that were mentioned previously into this platform. And then, of course, we train the trainers, basically. We go into training mode. We certify the client to conduct training based on our platform, and then it goes in full operation and service mode. So it's an end-to-end approach that we provide. And we are actually in process of opening the first VR training academy here in the country in a couple of weeks from now. It's all happening as we speak. And what I want to do last but not least, want to show you a short video which gives you a glimpse of how this works in practice.
الإدارة العامة لجمارك أبو ظبي تقدم أول برنامج تدريبي عبر الواقع الافتراضي لمفتشي الجمارك في خدمة شحن المطار. عهد جديد في برامج الواقع الافتراضي.
Thank you very much, Axel. Very insightful and very important for developers to really see how you are bringing the gamification part to real life into a B2B project and implementing VR content at its best to become a really practical experience. Thank you. I've got few questions to you and to Marius. I'll start with Marius. We saw in your presentation the hand tracking as an impressive SDK for developers. What we want to know from you is that when we can see such applications or APIs fully integrated in the commercial devices and applications.
Okay, very good question. It's actually something, the hand tracking, eye tracking is something that also from our side, we have actually an R&D department as well in our company. We are working on this since a long time. We have been trying many things, and we are really looking forward now to get our hands on the SDK and implement these features and try them out, because we have actually projects already in the pipeline where these features are required and very necessary actually to conduct meaningful training in virtual reality. Especially the eye tracking is a feature that is extremely important for us to basically be able to analyze and measure during the training execution where people are looking, if they pay attention to the right, right part of the environment and so on. So we're really looking forward to implement this.
Interesting. I think we've lost the guy, Marius.
Marius is not there anymore.
I'm. Can you hear me?
Are you here?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. I want to ask you the same question, but I cannot see your camera, so. Oh, okay. Okay. Marius, I would like to ask you the same question. You guys work directly on commercial devices, and HTC Vive launches those SDKs at some point when they are ready and fully commercial and pushed as software updates at some point. So where do you see this is going? Because we've seen many companies offering this hand tracking and hand gestures, and until now we don't see something maybe fully or complete.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the presentation, we're trying to have a monthly update with improvements and bug fixes. So, we're trying to get feedback from the developers. At the moment, we're still in early access, so that's why the latest version is 0.9.2. However, it's really close to 1.0, so I think it's going to happen really soon. The thing is that because we have many different Vive headsets at the moment, we want to make sure that the experience is equally good to all those headsets instead of focusing on just one. So once this happens and developers are quite satisfied with that, we want to really get the feedback from them, and then actually go public and actually have this as a final public version for everyone to use and recommend to use. But of course, developers can still experiment with it at the moment. And if they have any feature requests or anything, they can contact the developer relations team. So we're always eager to hear what they want to be able to do with the hand tracking SDK, and we're eager to integrate that feature for them.
Great, thank you very much for that. I will ask you the last question because we're running out of time. Briefly, I wanted to know from you, I mean, for the Middle East region, for the community of developers over here, I mean, what are the options and what are the added value that you will be offering as HTC Vive team globally? I've heard a little bit in your presentation on the community side, on the SDKs, on your platform and your accelerator program. So in a nutshell, why a developer today has to be part of your community?
Yeah, so well, we're always trying to reach out to the developer community, globally. We have different activities. For example, recently we had an eye tracking content development contest, which was available to developers globally. And in that, for example, we're giving access to hardware to developers so they can experiment with a new feature like eye tracking, and create an application and then have this application published in Viveport, for example, or get, apart from the fact that you experiment with the hardware, you can actually build a nice application and then, showcase it to your customers if you're a company. But especially for the developer community, we want to make sure that our community is inclusive. So we're trying to have all those tech talks that I mentioned, participate in virtual conferences. So we want to make sure that they can actually join as well and learn more things about the SDKs. So we don't just focus on local events. We try to make this as global as possible.
Thank you for that. Axel, last question. We've seen these great success stories here in Saudi Arabia, in the region. We're seeing in the same time your operation is mostly over here with the back office in R&D in Spain. Yeah. How does your roadmap look like in engaging with local Middle East developers? We are really keen on seeing what value can successful companies offer, and will we see a team here developing out of the Middle East your services?
Short answer, yes, and medium answer, because we have 2 minutes left, is yes. So what we see in the region here, and I'm long time in the region, this region is transforming right now. It used to be a technology import region. It becomes a technology export region. That is the goal of the region here. And this is all led, let's say, by the UAE and other countries following. And we are clearly part of this strategy, which means we want to develop technology in the Middle East that will be exported somewhere else. This is not a yes or no answer. This is a gradually movement of development, basically. In the future, we will have probably a hybrid model where we'll have key developers sitting here who need to be close for certain projects to customers. And we will have, of course, central developers continued to develop for us centrally in Spain. In that case, it will be a hybrid model, but the change is happening. Development is moving gradually to the Middle East.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's really, of course, development and VR development has so many uses today, and I believe that with what HTC is doing also to allow all of these different applications of virtual reality for different industries is just growing now and expanding all the time. We're just seeing it even more, and we've seen recently also that VR is finding so many solutions to the current situation as well. It's really going to continue like this. Yes. Thank you very much. Daniel, we'll see you again. And Alex, thank you very much for coming to the studio. Mario, great to meet you. Hope everything is well in London. And we hope to see you soon. And connect on the meeting platform. You all received your access. You might be receiving so many requests and meeting requests from developers to continue the discussion with them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sounds good. Thank you very much as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.